All right, welcome to this Developer Hours video. Juanma and I are re-recording this session because of a technical hiccup earlier on. So you're going to see part of this re-recorded, and then about 10-15 minutes in, we're going to jump into the recording from the session. So very quickly, my name is Jonathan. I am from Cape Town in South Africa. I'm a developer advocate at Automatic. And you can find me online at jonathanbossinger.com. It contains all of my social media links and all of those places. And then Juanma, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Juanma Garrido. I'm from Spain, but I'm actually living in the UK. And yeah, I'm also a developer advocate at Automatic, working in the same team than Jonathan. And yeah, looking forward to talk about the cool new things coming in WordPress 6.9 for developers.
Absolutely. So that's going to be our focus for this session. We're going to have another session like this in 2 weeks' time, focusing on more updates. Very quickly, because we're re-recording this, I'm going to go through the announcements very quickly, but we are posting this to WordPress TV afterwards, so this is probably where you're watching it now. If you're looking for more WordPress developer news and updates, please visit developer.wordpress.org/news. All of our blog posts and tutorials are there. And then for more WordPress tutorials and courses, please visit learn.wordpress.org. All right, our agenda for this session, I'm going to show you quickly how you can help test WordPress 6.9. Then I'm going to hand over to Juanma, who's going to describe DataViews and DataForm to us. And then finally, I will cover the Abilities API right at the end. So WordPress 6.9 is coming very, very soon. The scheduled date is December 2nd. So this is the blog post you can search for, Help Test WordPress 6.9. It includes all of the information about the features that are coming, testing tips, how to test. So if you'd like to help test out WordPress 6.9 before it's coming out, this is how you can do it. We're going to be focusing on these sessions on the developer updates. As mentioned, today we're doing DataViews and DataForm and the Abilities API, but everything you might need is there. I will link this up in the WordPress TV notes, so if you want to look for this just below this video, you can find it there. And now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Juanma. So Juanma, if you'd like to take over the screen, then we can get going.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Jonathan. Post disable participant screen sharing. So I
Okay,
think
let me fix that. Let me fix that. I will edit
yeah.
this out in post. You should be
No
co-host
worries.
now.
We can share. We are human.
Okay, you should have access now.
Okay, so sharing, this will stop other screen sharing. Do you want to continue? So yes, continue. And let me. So now I should be sharing the note. Is that right?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about DataViews, DataForm, like the new things coming in WordPress 6.9. Before I go through the new things, I want to highlight two things. The first thing is that these updates are available now. I mean, these DataViews and DataForm are React components that are released in the form of npm packages, and these npm packages are released on every Gutenberg cycle. So they have been updated every 2 weeks. So all these things that I'm going to talk about today are actually available if you want to check them through the DataViews npm package. The second thing I want to do before I go through all the new things coming is a brief introduction of what is DataViews and DataForm. To do that, I have this diagram, and I want to share a few ideas that I think are important in order to then understand better the new things that are coming. So one idea is that DataViews and DataForm are React components, and as any other React components, they receive a set of props. And through these props, we can define the behavior and the outcome of these React components. One thing to be taken into account is that both DataViews and DataForm, they share an API. They share the Fields API. So we will talk about Fields API. We will talk about updates on the Fields API, and this is an API that is shared. So these two React components, they both receive a prop called fields, and the API, the object, the array of objects we pass to this prop is uses an API that is shared for both components. Another main idea is that DataViews is the component we use to display data, and DataForm the component we use to edit data. Because of that, DataViews expects to receive as data an array of objects. So here's an example of the type of data that could be displayed by DataViews. This is an array of different objects. There could be more here. But DataForm actually expects an object because we are editing data. It only expects in its data prop, it expects just an object. And then beyond the fields and data prop, which both components share, then DataViews has a view prop that is unique to DataViews, and DataForm also receives a form. So with the view, we define the different grid and the order, the items per page, a lot of information that is used by DataViews. And the form prop for DataForm, it contains like the specific fields that are going to be displayed and the layout use and some other things. The whole information about these APIs, these props and all the how the data is expected to be received by this React component is available in the documentation, in the block editor handbook, or in the npm package README documentation page. So with this brief introduction, I'm going to use the dev note of DataViews DataForm updates coming in WordPress 6.9 as the main reference as I go through the different explanations. So let's start with the fields API. The field API, as I just mentioned, is shared by the DataViews and the DataForm component. And one of the cool things is that now we can define a lot of new types of data for the field. So in 6.8, we were only able to define 3 types of data, but now in 6.9, we are able to define all these new ones, like to 13 new types of data. So this is important because just by defining the type, we have out of the box functionalities such as sorting, validation, filter, editing, and a lot of things that both the DataViews component and DataForm component, they know what to do when the type is defined. So they know how to sort information. They know the specific edit React component that needs to be displayed to edit that component. So this is like a very important property that we can define in the fields API. Another thing that is new in this new cycle, in 6.9 cycle, is the isValid property. In 6.8, this property was a method that allowed us to define the logic where we could return a Boolean, true or false, if the value was valid or not. But now we can, the isValid has been overhauled, and now it expects an object with 3 properties like required, element, custom. So here we can define if the value is required or not. So if it can be empty or not. The element, we can define like a set of elements that are the ones valid for that specific field. But then we can also define a method, a custom validation rule via a method where we can set all the logic we want to decide whether the value inserted for that field is valid or not. And we can also return a specific message when the value is not valid. And then we can continue with set value and some other properties that I think they have been actually captured by the original recording, so I don't have to go through them again. Hopefully, we can complement the missing part with this recording.
Absolutely. And I think this is the point where Elliot broke in with a question about whether DataViews and DataForm can be used admin only or front end.
Yeah,
And I think we
yeah.
captured that question as well. So we will now segue over to the live recording for the rest of this video.
Okay, so you can display whatever you want. So it's like an agnostic React component. As long as you pass an array of data, you can display whatever you want. But it's meant to be used in WordPress core, but you can apply in your own plugins. For example, here in templates, this view is managed by DataViews. If we go to pages, this is managed by DataViews. And for example, here I have a bunch of examples. And as you can see here, this is like custom data that I'm retrieving from an external API. And this is also managed by DataViews. So yeah, the cool thing is that this is a React component that is being developed for WordPress core, but at the same time, it's something that the WordPress project provides to plugin developers. So they can use these components in their own projects.
Elliot, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about the is valid method that now offer like more capabilities of validation. And this is related to another thing that we will see later when we talk about DataForm. So yeah, if DataViews, we talked about type, we talked about is valid. Then we have set value that allow us to, this is related to DataForm, but allow us to define what do we want to set when the value changes. And this is really cool because, for example, if we have a complex structure of data, we can just define the ID using this dot notation, and automatically the set value and get value methods will be automatically set. So we don't need to define them manually. But another cool thing that we can do is that when the data changes, we can update more than one property. We can update several properties at the same time. So we have all the power here by leveraging this method set value and get value that already existed in the previous version. And then we have another property called edit that allows us to define the React component that is going to be used to edit the component. This is also related to the data form. We can set a custom React component, but there is a set of bundled React components that we can directly use. And these bundled components are these ones. Password, telephone, text area, toggle. Let me show you very quickly how this would look like. Which one, for example, form validation. So here you have like different ways of editing the data. All of this is done automatically just by setting the edit value to one of these bundled React components. But we can also provide a custom one. Okay, so this is regarding the Fields API that, as I said, is like an API shared by DataViews and DataForms. Regarding DataViews, some of the things that I would like to highlight are the view that now allows a group by field. So for example, I have here an example. If we go to DataViews, there is a group by type. now we can display. This is only available in this layout, in this grid layout. But as you can see, we can now display the list of elements grouped by a specific field. And this is now available thanks to the updates to the API. What else? Another cool thing that we can do now is infinite scroll. Let me show you an example here. If we go to infinite scroll. So now, as you can see here, 6 of 19 items loaded. As I scroll down, the different items are loaded. And this is thanks to this new property, infinite scroll, well, this new method that we can use to, so every time we scroll, this event is triggered and we can define custom logic to update the data that is being displayed in the data views. So we can do that now. We can do like infinite scroll. And the last thing I want to mention about data views is the children. So data views is really cool because it encapsulates a lot of things that are magically working. So I can create a very simple data views with a set of data, and there is a lot of functionality out of the box. But if I want to customize the layout, now we have the ability to create like custom layouts, because now we have access to all the different parts of the data views. Now we can set a different order, or we can create containers for the different parts, and we have access to all the parts of data views. For example, we have like subcomponents such as data views filters toggle, footer, layout, pagination. So if we go to, for example, this, we have access to each one of these parts now, and we can order them differently to maybe match a custom design that we have. So this is something that we can do now in WordPress 6.9. Okay, Fields API, DataViews Fields API. Remember, it's like the shared API for DataViews DataForm. Then the DataViews is a React component, so there are some updates. Now let's talk about DataForm.
Before we dive into DataForm, we have another question. He says, I presume DataViews is only for the admin. It's not available to use on the front end. Infinite scroll on the front end would be super useful.
Yeah, it's a React component, and you can actually use it in any way you want. So for example, if you have a headless WordPress, you can actually use these components. If you want to use DataViews in the front end, you would need to find a way to render React components in the front end, which is not something WordPress offer out of the box, but I guess it's something possible. But to simplify things, yeah, it's meant to be used in the admin dashboard. In the same way, there are other React components happening in the dashboard. In fact, any block editor page in the admin dashboard is a React application. So, so yeah, I think that.
I was going to say, it could make for a fun hackathon project.
Yeah, like using like a challenge of the day, right? Like using DataViews, a component in the front end. Yeah, that would be a cool experiment just to see if it can be done. But my guess is that it's going to be complicated, and maybe there are other ways to achieve the ultimate goal of that.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, let's continue with the DataForm. For this component, I want to highlight the form prop. Remember that we explained earlier that DataForm component receives different props. One of the important ones is the form prop. So this prop now allows like new layouts, card and row. Let me show you how this look like. For example, here, now we can do things like this. We can define different cards, and we can actually, the business, we can change this, and this is displayed here. And the other one was row, if I'm not, yeah, row. So we can also define this. We can define a row with different fields, and then another row with a set of columns. And yeah, we can create our custom layout using this. So this is something we can define as part of the form prop. Another thing is that now we have, if we go to the validity. The validity is another property that is received by the data form. And this means that the data form is a controlled component, which means that we need to pass the object that contains the information about the validity or not of the fields that are being managed by the data form. But in order to do that, the npm package component offers some tools, such as the use form validity, which is a hook we can use to pass the fields, pass the values, and it returns the object we can pass to the validity. So yeah, we can use this hook, or we can create our custom logic to add any specific validation logic we need to implement. Okay, so I think that we have covered the very interesting things that are coming in WordPress 6.9 regarding DataViews and DataForm. In the dev node, you have full info about all the updates with links to the issues. And I would like to highlight the idea that these components are already available now. I mean, you don't need to wait to WordPress 6.9. These components have been worked during the WordPress 6.9 cycle, but they have been released every 2 weeks in Gutenberg. So if you want to use them now, you can actually implement them from the npm package directly in your plugins. Okay, and before I finish, there are 2 more things that I'd like to talk about. One of them is the DataViews picker, which is also a new thing. This is a variant of the DataViews component that allow us to create a selection grid. So let me show you. In DataViews here, yeah, DataViews picker. So we can create this layout. If we go to the inspector, we can see how we can capture every time we click, and when we confirm, when we submit, we can do whatever we want to do with the item selected. So this is another new thing that is available now in the DataViews npm package. And the other thing is that now this is something that it will be new in WordPress 6.9. The DataViews now include a way to persist the views. So if we change the view, for example, if we go to this example, in 6.8, whenever we change the layout and we went out and then come back to the same page, we lose every time the view that was selected. But now there is a persistence layer thanks to a new package that is called WordPress View that relies on another package that is called WordPress Persistence. But the final outcome is that now the views, the view that you have selected is persisted. So I think this has been a very quick view, but hopefully it has been helpful to to understand and to learn what's coming regarding these two awesome React components.
Thanks, Juanma. We had somebody ask if we can share the examples repo link. It is in the slides, but I'm going to paste that link in the chat now, so you can grab that there and you can check out Juanma's awesome examples. In the slides as well, Juanma, do you want to chat about your developer blog post quickly?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for the reminder,
No
Jonathan.
problem.
So I don't have access right now to the slides, but if you go to the developer blog and you look for DataViews, I wrote an introduction to the DataViews component, and it's actually a tutorial of creating a project, a plugin that leverages DataViews component to display a set of custom data. Is the project that I explained in the article is this one actually. And the cool thing is that it also includes some actions, so we can upload media to the media library from these images retrieved from an external service. We can see them now here. So yeah, I invite you to have a look at this post. And spoiler, there is another article in progress that hopefully will be published in the following weeks, focused on DataForm. So you will have like these two additional resources to learn about these components.
Awesome. I was experimenting with DataViews in my live stream yesterday because I've never looked at them, never touched them, and just wanted to get a feel for what was involved. And I realized afterwards what I should have done was gone and read your two articles first, because you really break it down step by step, all the pieces. You know, I tend to be the kind of guy who just dives in and starts trying things. So I do recommend reading Juanma's articles. It's a nice breakdown about how it all works, how to put it all together. And then check out the live demo. Just install it on your own WordPress site and just play with it. There's so much cool stuff coming there. So I do recommend checking that out for everybody. All right. Are there any other questions around data views or data forms before we move on? I'm going to take over sharing so long. Let me get my screen over. Let's see if I can remember how Zoom works. Just one. There we go. Okay, so you should see the slides now. If you can't see the slides, let me know. I also just need to chat because that goes down because Zoom likes doing weird things to me. Okay, cool. Everybody seems to be good there. All right, so that's data views, data forms. I did share the link to the slides earlier. This will also get shared. I'll share it to the meetup event afterwards. So all the links are in the slides. Right, let's move on to the Abilities API. So the Abilities API is something that kind of developed out of the core AI teams, AI developments, getting WordPress ready for interacting with LLMs and all that kind of thing. But I want to focus specifically just on the API today, because this is what's coming to WordPress 6.9. Because what happened during the development of a few AI packages to sort of connect WordPress to LLMs and AI apps was that the developers realized that currently WordPress doesn't have a standardized way to register and execute specific sets of capabilities within a WordPress space. So if you think about plugin developers, when they extend WordPress, they can either use, if there's actions available, they might extend it that way. There might be internal functions that they need to call, or it might be via a REST API endpoint or something. When developers are building plugins, they might expose their functionality through either one or many of those different ways. And so the API, the Abilities API, as it says here, creates a unified registry of functionality that can be discovered, validated, and executed consistently across different contexts, including PHP, REST API, AI powered, JavaScript, all those kind of places. So what I like about it is it makes everything very standard. So when you are saying WordPress core or my plugin or my theme has this functionality that is custom to it, how it's registered becomes standardized, how it is exposed to external applications or developers or functionalities is standardized. And the idea is that eventually, hopefully, everybody uses this new standard, and it all just magically works. Now you'll see it talks about here, what is the abilities API? So an ability is a self-contained unit of functionality with defined inputs, outputs, permissions, and execution logic. And it basically makes everything discoverable, defines permission checks, organizes abilities into logical categories, allows you to validate inputs and outputs, and automatically exposes abilities through REST API endpoints. So all of that is built in when you register an ability and when you use it. There is a demo that we created, which is what I'm going to be showing you today, which you can also find on the WP training team organization, called Abilities API Demo. There are a couple of abilities that I've registered. I'm just going to run through one of them today, show you how to register an ability, what are the things that you look out for, and then also how you can then execute that ability in either PHP or in the REST API. So I'm going to open up my WordPress site here. And you'll see I've got just get to my plugins. I've got the Abilities API demo open. Here is the code. Currently, this version of this Abilities API demo requires Composer to install the Composer dependencies. I'll chat towards the end about why I'm doing that. But if you want to run this code on your local without Composer, you can just remove the vendor autoload stuff. Make sure you're running WordPress 6.9, either one of the RCs or when WordPress 6.9 is working, and all the ability stuff will just work. I'm going to open up a very simple ability, so the Get Plugins ability, for example. So let's go into Get Plugins. And so you'll see that the first thing is you register all abilities inside the WP Abilities API init action hook. So you register a callback function just like you would any other init action hook. And then you call the WP register ability function. Now that function requires the ability name. So in this case, I'm calling it plugins get plugins. So that's the namespace and that's the name of the ability. And it then has an array of arguments. Going to also share with you the dev note if it hasn't been shared. Oh no, it has been shared. Thank you, Juanma. So that's also covered in the dev note. It has a label. So that says what the ability does. It has a description which describes the functionality of the ability. Abilities need to belong to a category. Now in WordPress 6.9, there are two default categories that are being shipped. There is I think it's a core and a site category. So ideally all core abilities will be registered to the core category and any site abilities can be registered to the site category. But if you want your own categories for your plugins or themes, you can register your own categories, which I have done here. Then you set up your input and output schema. Now, for this ability, I don't need to send it any input. I just want to get data. So I haven't defined an input schema. I'll show you an input schema in a second. But for the output schema, this works exactly the same way as any other JSON schema. So I say this is an object. It has a series of properties. The properties are success, the list of plugins. The list of plugins itself is an array. And it has some properties. So the properties are the name of the plugin, the slug, the file, the status, and the version. So I'm telling the ability, this is the kind of data you need to expect back. So if you think about when you create functions in PHP and you specify your input in your doc block and your outputs in your doc block, this is very similar to that. You define your inputs, you define your outputs. It also can have an error output if you want to use that. And so those are your input and output schema. Then it has an execute callback. So this is very similar to what you've seen before in other functionality. And this is just a function that runs that processes this abilities functionality. This plugin will receive any inputs you send it via the input schema. It will need to match that input schema. So if you say to it, the input schema is a string and you send it an integer, it will automatically do that validation check and fail and say, hey, you've sent me the wrong input. The permission callback can be on a per ability basis. So you can say only admins can execute this ability, or only editors, or only subscribers, whatever the case may be. And then there are some meta fields, which I'll dive into in a second. Mostly the show and rest one you will use. But there are other things that you can set up there. And then you just have your callback function. So my callback function is fairly standard PHP code. It checks if the plugin function exists. It then does a bunch of logging. It then does the get plugins call, which we've all seen before. It counts all the plugins, creates a list of active plugins, goes through, defines the plugins array, so the name, the slug, the file, the version, the status, everything that I've told it to expect in the output schema. And then eventually, I've got a whole bunch of logging in here, eventually returns either success or failure and the list of plugins. So the core PHP functionality of this is very, very simple. Now, what this means is I can, in any other plugin, in any other theme, I can fetch this ability and execute it. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my terminal. Hopefully you can see the terminal. If you can't see the terminal, let me know. And I'm going to shoot on over to my WordPress site. And I'm going to use one of my favorite tools, WP Shell. So this is a way that you could execute PHP code in your terminal. You do need to have WP CLI installed, but I'll show you a PHP version of this in a file as well. And then from here, what I can do is I can say ability equals WP get ability. So there's a core function for getting the ability. And all I need to pass to the get ability function is this ability name. So plugins get plugins. So let's do that. Can I paste in my terminal? I should be able to. There we go. All right. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. There we go. And you'll see what it does is it fetches that ability and it contains, because I'm fetching the ability object, it contains all the information that I've kind of set up in the object. So it contains, let me just scroll up a little bit, it's a lot of information. It contains the label, it contains the category description, it contains the input schema, it contains if there's an output schema. And now what I can do, now that I have that ability, is I can say, execute that ability. Let me actually just see if I can clear my screen here. No, it can't clear my screen. So WP shell, let's call
We
it,
have a question in the chat, so whenever
sure.
you can. Okay.
As soon as I've run this, then we can do the chat. So let's say
Okay.
ability execute. I don't have to pass anything to the execute, and it will then make that thing happen. And already look, it's telling me, hey, ability does not have the necessary permission. Why is that? Because as the WP shell user, I am not an authenticated user. So I need to do something like set, I think it's set current user. So that a fake that I'm basically logged in as this user in this shell instance. There we go. And now if I run it, hey, now it's happy. Now it's verified that the logged in user is the correct user. And there it's returning all the list of plugins available to me. Now this is a very simple example. Most of the early examples we've been experimenting with are very simple, just getting data, receiving data. But that's just the basics of how it works. Elliot says, do you need to connect to an LLM to use Abilities API? And would that use up your credits? If it does, who covers the cost? I'm assuming it would be the user rather than the plugin author. Okay, there's a couple of questions in there, so let's deal with the first one. Do you need to connect to an LLM to use the Abilities API? The answer to that is no. I am not connected to any LLMs over here when I'm running this functionality here in the shell. I can also, and let's do that now quickly. Let us create a new plugin. So let's say WP test plugin .php. And no, that wasn't what I wanted. Hang on. Sorry, folks. I'm creating things incorrectly here. I can't type today. What's going on? Okay, so there's my folder, and I can say new file, and it's a WP test plugin.php, and I'm just going to create plugin header. Plugin name, test plugin, description is fine. Okay, so that's the AI doing that, yes, and my AI is auto-completing that for me, but I don't. But now what I can do, just in regular PHP, I can say ability equals WP get ability.
Don't forget
And pass in.
the tag, the PHP tag at the beginning of the
Ah, I
file.
forgot the PHP tag, thank you. Sorry, I'm so used to PHP Storm doing that for me. And then I can execute that ability from PHP. So if you think about, let's say you're working with a forms plugin, and often the forms plugin will have an action hook that allows you to hook into the submission of the forms plugin, or an action hook to be able to add fields to the form plugin or whatever the case may be. What you could now do with abilities, instead of using those action hooks, you could create an ability that runs when the form submission runs. So the ability could do a certain amount of things with a certain series of inputs and outputs. And then if you're creating an extension for that plugin, you could fetch that ability and then run it whenever you need to run it, whatever the case may be. So abilities are not tied directly to AI and LLMs. You can use abilities in WordPress 6.9, RC, whatever tomorrow without any AI things. It's only when you want to use something like MCP, which can connect to abilities, or when you want to use something like the PHP AI SDK, which can connect to abilities, then you would need to worry about those. We are planning future sessions around those things, so we can chat about that then. But for abilities is AI agnostic. You don't have to worry about AI or LLMs. You can start using abilities today. So my recommendation is if you manage a plugin that exposes functionality to your customers, developers, extenders, whatever the case may be, start learning what abilities are and how they work, how the inputs work, how the outputs work. Start thinking about how you could adapt that functionality into abilities. I'll show you another little example. There is I'm going to find it over here. There is a little plugin that I manage that I've copied over to the training team repository. It's called list URLs. It essentially, let me show you the trunk version. So the trunk version has this core function called generate URL list. And what that does is that receives an array of arguments. It receives a true or false variable, turn them into links or not. It then fetches the posts from WordPress, loops through the list of posts, and then returns them as an array of links. That's a perfect thing to replace with an ability. Now, in the beginning, when you first replace it with an ability, you might think, okay, but I'm just writing the same stuff in a different way. Where is the advantage? I'll chat about the advantage in a second. But I want to show you what that code might look like if you used it as an ability. So let me go back here. So what I'm doing now is I'm still using the same URL. This is the wrong one, sorry. I'm in the wrong branch. Abilities branch. So let's go here. So here I am registering an ability category for my plugin. I'm registering the ability with the inputs and the outputs. And then I'm still using the same generate URL list. The only difference is I just received the input array, and that's all the inputs from the ability. I still do the same setting up and all that. I still do the same return. But the cool thing about abilities, and I see there were some other questions there, I'll get back to those in a second, is by default, when you register an ability in 6.9, it comes with some default REST API endpoints. So in my custom ability that I'm registering here called list URLs, by registering that ability, by default, there will then be a WP abilities version 1 abilities / my plugin, my abilities name endpoint. And I can then query that from JavaScript inside the admin area. I can query that from the front end to get those URLs. If I connect it to MCP and AI, I can query it there. So just by registering in one place, I now don't have to write also the REST API, the register REST root stuff to get it working in the REST API. And there's also, and this is unfortunately not in 6.9 yet, but it's hopefully coming soon. There's also a JavaScript package, a JavaScript client where you can just call an executability function in JavaScript, pass it the slug, and it'll just work, fetch the ability information, and return it back. So it's kind of making it this one way of registering functionality, one specific set of inputs and outputs that automatically manages validation and checks, user access management, capability management, all just by registering it in one place. Getting back to Elliot's questions about credits and all that kind of thing, at the moment, if you're using MCP to connect to your AI tools, then yes, that'll be for your cost. I don't know if there are any discussions around how that'll change in the future, which is one of the reasons why abilities is separate from any AI implementations. So right now you can use them. And then assuming it would be the user rather than the plugin author, that's another good question. So if you're building abilities into your plugins specifically for the AI use case, then you will probably need to let your users know, listen, if you're using this via MCP or whatever reason, you're going to need to have an AI tool with credits or whatever the case may be. So that's something that plugin developers might need to start being aware of, is start including that in your terms and conditions, saying, look, I'm enabling this functionality for you, but you're going to need to pay the cost of whatever credits. Elliot says, Shazad, I saw your question. I'll get back to it. Elliot says, standardizing the functionality via REST and future AI. Exactly, yes. Standardizing everything, making it. So at the moment, you could say, well, let's go with REST API as the standard. But my understanding is that AI tools struggle with just default REST API. And especially if you want to, REST API tends to be very like one-to-one relationship. So it's either get post or create post or list posts. What if you wanted to create post and then publish post and then share post to social media? You would have to do 2 or 3 REST requests and then a third external request. Whereas if you created an ability called My Beautiful Post Creation and Submission Ability, and it handled all the internal creating, submitting, publishing, sending out to social media, you just make one request to that ability via PHP, via JavaScript, via your AI tool, and it handles the rest. So it opens up. Juanma mentioned the I think it's the command palette workflows, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the right term?
Yeah, I'm actually looking for the issue. There is an issue that actually talks about the connection of abilities with another idea that is called workflows. So yeah, that's it's in the mind of the abilities API to be able to create like a more complex workflows using like a more granular abilities. Yeah, I'm looking for the issue. I will link it in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So yes, so it just standardizes everything. There's so much built-in functionality that is done through the standardization, and it sets the foundation for WordPress going forward to be automation tools ready, AI ready, other plugins ready, other themes ready through this nice standardized format. So the other question that we had from Shazad was, can we return WP error object on the ability callback function to throw an error? So on that note, I just want to open up the docs and share with you the PHP API link. So by default, I think there's a section here about errors. Right. Yeah. So it talks here about execute callback. The callback should return the result of the abilities operation or WP error object on failure. So that's exactly what you should do, Shazad. So I hope that answers your question. Also, in terms of permissions callback, you can use Booleans or error on failure. There's also internal error checking. So with the validation of the input and output schemas, there's internal use of the WP error object. So it's kind of all this, the WordPress error functionality we're used to is all built in by default. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to mention was that I spoke about this earlier, but I spoke about this this meta area. You'll see that there's the show in REST option. Essentially, that is what will enable the REST API endpoints for you. So you don't have to enable them. You can just register the abilities for PHP. But if you want to make them available for the default REST API endpoints, all it requires is that show in REST true. And then what that also does is when we get the JavaScript client, by enabling it as true, it enables the JavaScript client. Now, I want to show you very quickly sort of the future of what that could look like. So this little demo that I have has all of these abilities enabled. And I've created an admin page, and I'm using the JavaScript client to fetch and query this data. So essentially what it does, I'm not going to dive too deep into the code, but I'll show you in the admin. It's this executability function. So all I have to do is get the executability function, and then let me just find it later. That's not what I want. Sorry, my copy paste foo is failing me today. And then I simply execute the ability, passing it the ability name. So the same name that I registered. No, not that one. Where were we? Let me find it here. Let's go to get plugins. The same name that I use there. So it's standard, whether I'm going REST API, whether I'm going via PHP, whether I'm going via JavaScript. I get the ability name. Where's that JS file gone? So I pass it in the ability name. I pass it in the input if it requires input. If it doesn't require input, I don't pass it any input. And then it'll return the same result, the same either object or string or whatever the case may be, and I can then go off and use it. Now, what I love about that is whenever I need to interact with WordPress functionality or WordPress data, if I'm working with WordPress core data, then I can use the core data package. That's great. But if I need some kind of custom data set, then I need to either register a REST API endpoint and customize that to my needs. Or what we used to do back in the old days was use admin Ajax and nonces, which is often prone to security issues. Here, I don't have to worry about any of that. I just say, execute the ability, give me back the data, and it just works. And that's one of the cool things I love about it. So this demo basically is triggering that executability, fetching the ability information, returning it back to me. So there's the plugin list, fetching the information, returning it back to me. This does require authentication, so it does need, again, needs an authenticated user. So if you want to use this on the front end, you will need to figure out authentication, ideally via JSON Web Token or similar. I can do things like read the debug log. I don't think I have anything in my, oh, I do. I have stuff in my debug log. So I'm using an ability which reads my debug log, returns the log back to me. I have another ability which I'm clearing the debug log. So now if I fetch the debug log, it should be empty. Yep, there's nothing there now. And I can even create a post from here. So it just opens up so much. You're not relying on just REST API endpoints or just internal functions or just action hooks. You have all of these, hopefully all of these abilities available, and you can just call them as you need to. Okay. Any questions? We have hit the hour, so I want to make sure we don't go over the hour too much, even though it's my fault we started a bit late. I see that Juanma shared some cool abilities stuff with us, so thank you for that. Any other questions around either abilities or data views or anything along those lines? Otherwise, I think we can wrap up for the day.
Yeah, doesn't seem there are more questions in the chat.
Cool. Awesome. Well, folks, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to mention this in here. I'll edit this out for the final video. I have asked Juanma to hang around after this so we can quickly re-record his intro because I forgot to hit record. So I'll make sure that's all put together. Thank you for bearing with my failures in the meetup event. We are doing another one of these, as I said, in 2 weeks' time. So we'll be covering a few other things then. Also, check us out on YouTube. Juanma, you stream every Friday.
Every Friday at 4 o'clock UTC. Yeah.
Friday, 4 o'clock UTC. Look out for Juanma on Twitch. Is it Juanma Codes on Twitch?
Yeah, let me find. Yeah, I will share
Find the link and share. Juanma Codes on Twitch. He's generally doing way more fun things with JavaScript. Juanma is like the JavaScript king in our team. So if you want to learn about anything JavaScript, React, or whatever, go follow him. I stream every Tuesday. I'm usually playing with the AI stuff, so that's why abilities and LLMs and all that's in my bag. So I'm every Tuesday at 2 p.m. UTC. Otherwise, as we mentioned, developer blog, all the articles are on there. There is a developer blog post I'm writing about the Abilities API, which should ship at the end of this week. But otherwise, you can find us all of the places online. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Juanma, for sharing today with me. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Jonathan.
Bye.
Okay, bye.